One might argue that if Ilva had not stood so still on the stones, the whole pack would never have had the pleasure of watching her be rejected. But then again, if the Alpha King had ever once looked at what was being done inside his own hall, nobody would have been standing on those stones at all. So really, when one thought about it, the entire business was his fault, all of it. As Poison Warden of Cairnhold, Ilva was not much of a hoper, and she was even less of a wisher. Her work was a cup of wine in a cold room an hour before the king drank it, and a slow count of her own heartbeat afterward. She had held the post for 6 years, and had been wrong exactly never, which was the only record her trade allowed. So when Wystan Ashvale, brother of the Alpha King, asked her in the herb garden at midwinter to stand for him at the reckoning, she did not hope. She went very quiet, the way she went quiet over a cup she was unsure of, and said yes before her sense could catch up with her mouth. The reckoning came once a year, on the night the summer moon turned. Every unmated wolf of the seat, who wished to be spoken for, climbed the 6 flat stones at the head of the great hall, and stood there while the pack watched. Ilva had seen it every year, from the wall, where it had always looked like a thing that happened to other people. From the stones, it looked different. From the stones, the hall was a wide, dark mouth, full of faces, and every one of them was turned up at her. "Breathe," Junia muttered from the step below. Junia had been her closest friend since they were 11, and had never once in all that time said a soft word she did not mean. "You look like a woman waiting to be hanged." "I am waiting." "Then wait prettier." Behind them, at the foot of the stones, Marin stood with her hands folded. Keeper of remedies, mistress of the still room, the woman who had taken a starving girl of 9 off the winter road and taught her every leaf and root and bitter white powder that could stop a heart. Ilva glanced down. Marin gave her the smallest nod in the world, and something in her chest unclenched half a turn. Then the horns went, and Wystan came up the hall. He was handsomer than a man had any business being, but Ilva was not looking at the handsome. She was looking at the way he walked. She had watched people approach a cup they knew was poisoned. He walked exactly like that. He stopped at the foot of the stones. He did not look up at her. "Wystan," she said. He closed his eyes. Later, when she laid the night out in a line the way she laid out a poisoning, this was the piece she kept coming back to. Not the words, the half-breath before them, and the way his mouth shaped some other sentence first and then abandoned it. "I do not know her," he said. The hall went so quiet. Ilva could hear the fire. There is a form of words for the rejection. It is old and short, and has 3 parts, and Ilva had heard it twice in her life, both times at the wrong end of a bad year. "I will not know her," Wystan said. His voice cracked down the middle of it. "Let the stones forget her name." And then he turned and walked out of his brother's hall, and did not once lift his head. For the space of a breath, nothing happened at all. Then somebody laughed. It was not cruelty, the first one. It was the sound a person makes when a silence gets too heavy to hold. But it gave the room permission, and the rest came up all at once, like water finding a crack. 6 years tasting his brother's supper, somebody called from the back, and she never once tasted that one coming. That was the one they would repeat in the kitchens for a month, and in the lower yard for a year. And Ilva knew it while it was still in the air, because she could hear how well it was made. Should have had the warden taste the proposal first. She is still standing up there. Nobody told the poor creature she is allowed to get down. Junia was halfway up the stones, with her face white with fury. Audric had both arms round her middle and was hauling her back. Ilva stood. It was the only thing left that she knew how to do, so she did it well. Spine straight, hands loose, chin exactly level, and she did not look at the door Wystan had gone through, and she waited for it to be finished. That was when the first cold came. It began under her breastbone, small and precise, like a splinter of river ice pushed in and left there. Rejection sickness. She had read of it in the black book in the still room, in a hand 200 years dead. A wolf spoken against on the stones has 3 days to be claimed before the blood cools. After that, the wolf inside her would begin to turn its face away, and go on turning it, and no root and no leaf, and no bitter white powder in the world could call it back. 3 days. And nobody in Cairnhold would take a woman the Alpha's own brother had put down in front of the pack. The cold spread, her knees informed her, politely, that they were considering other arrangements. And then the laughter stopped. It did not fade. It was cut. The way a rope is cut. Every wolf in that hall had gone still, at once, and the air had pulled tight, and the thing in her chest, that was busy dying, rolled over and looked up. Emery's Ashvale, Alpha King of the Ashvale, was crossing his own hall. She had served him 6 years, and never once been near him. He was a shape at the high table, a hand that lifted a cup after she had cleared it, a low voice through a door. She had built a whole man out of those pieces, and the man walking toward her now did not match one of them. He came up the stones without hurrying. He stopped in front of her, near enough that she could see the gray threading the black at his temple, the old white seam of a scar running back into his hair, and the eyes, pale washed green, not amused and not pitying, reading her face the way she read a cup. "Warden," he said. Ylva could not have produced a word for a kingdom. He held out his hand. Palm up, open, waiting. Afterward she would never be able to say why she gave him hers. Her hand simply went out, the way it had gone out for a wine cup 10,000 times, and his closed around it, warm and dry and absolutely certain, and he turned to the hall with her fingers folded into his. "Hear me," he said. And the cold under Ylva's breastbone opened all the way out, like a hand, and the hall tipped sideways, and the roaring in her ears came up over his voice and swallowed it whole. He was still speaking when she went down on the stones. She did not hear one word of it. Ylva woke in the sick hall, with the smell of feverfew in her nose, and the absolute certainty that she had died in the night and been sent somewhere with poor ventilation. She was alive. She established it the way she established anything, slowly and by evidence. Ceiling cracked in the shape of a running hair. Bed. Third from the door, the one with the short leg, her own hands on the blanket, unbandaged. And under her breastbone where the splinter of ice had been, a warmth, not health. She knew health. This was something else. Low and steady, and faintly aggravating. Like a lamp left burning in a room she was not in. "She lives," said Junia. Ylva turned her head. Junia sat on the next bed, with her boots on the blanket and her arms folded, which meant she had been there a long time and intended to be difficult about it. Audric hovered behind her, holding a cup of something gone cold enough to grow a skin. "How long?" Ylva said. Her voice came out in pieces. "A day and most of a night. The stones." She got up onto one elbow. "I remember the stones." Junia and Audric traded a look, quick and miserable, and Ylva had known them long enough to translate it exactly. It said, "She does not know yet," and it said, "You tell her." "I remember all of it," Ylva said, to spare them. Wystan came. Wystan spoke against me. The hall laughed. "I do not need it," softened. "I was there." "That is not the part," Audric said. "What?" "That is not the part we were not saying." Ylva looked between them. Something moved in her chest, that low, warm lamp, and she pressed the heel of her hand against her breastbone to make it stop. "The king came up the stones," Junia said carefully. "Do you remember what he said?" "I remember a hand." "Nothing after it." Junia let out a breath. "Right? Well, he said, 'Hear me.' And then he told a hall of 400 wolves that the right of the standing hand was his to take and that he was taking it. Then he carried you out himself. Through the front of the hall, past the whole household. The words arrived one at a time, and none of them fit together. The right of the what? Ylva said. Standing hand. Audric had gone pink. It is in the old rights. Nobody has used it in 140 years. If a wolf is spoken against on the stones, any wolf of the seat may take that wolf's hand before the blood cools, in front of witnesses, and the claim stands. He swallowed. It does not need the wolf to be awake. It does not need the wolf to agree, Junia said, is what he is trying not to say. Ilva sat all the way up, and the room did something unhelpful, and she waited for it to finish. He claimed me, she said. Yes. In front of the pack, in front of everyone, half the seat has not slept. The Vasquire delegation is still here for the summer treaty, and they saw the whole of it, so it is not only ours anymore, it is already halfway over the border. Junia's jaw worked. Ilva, I have to ask you something, and I need you not to be proud about it. Have you ever spoken to that man? No. He is the king, Junia. I taste his food. I have never been closer to him than the length of this room until last night. Ilva looked at her own hand on the blanket, and could not stop looking at it. He does not know my name. He used your name. Ilva went still. He said it, Odric confirmed, quiet. Twice. He did not ask anyone for it. And Ilva thought, with the small cold part of her mind that had kept her alive 6 years, that a man does not use the name of a woman he has never spoken to unless he has been keeping it somewhere. Why? She said. Nobody knows. And here is the rest of it. Junia leaned forward. Nobody in that hall thinks he did it. Out of kindness. They think Wyston crossed him, and the king took it out of him, in public with the one thing he could not undo. She grimaced. The ones who do not think that think worse of you. They think I arranged it. You went down and he picked you up like he had been waiting to. Ilva put both feet on the cold floor. The hall swam and settled. She reached for her tunic. Her hands were steady, and she was glad of it because nothing else in her was. Where is Wyston? She said. Gone before dawn. 2 horses. No escort. Audric hesitated. Everyone is saying he looked ill when he spoke against you. He looked at the ground, Ilva said, is what he looked. The door at the end of the sick hall opened, and Marin came in, with her sleeves pushed back and her hair coming out of its pins, and one look at her face put every other question out of Ilva's head. Marin had stood over a boy with a spearhead in his gut and told him a joke while she pulled it. Marin did not frighten. She was frightened now. Out! She said to Junia and Odric. Both of you, they went. Marin crossed to the bed, took Ilva's face in both hands, turned it to the window light, and looked into her eyes with the flat professional attention Ilva had learned every single thing she knew from. How much warmth. Under the breastbone, steady. Any cold left? None. Marin shut her eyes a moment. Then it took. She said, Gods rot the whole business. It took. Marin, what is happening? A girl I raised has been handed to the most dangerous man in this territory in front of 400 witnesses, and there is not a right or a law or a word in any book I own that gets her back out. Marin let go and stood. He will come. And when he does, you will say nothing. You will not thank him and you will not accuse him. You will let me speak for you. There are things about that family you do not know. Then tell me. Not here, Marin. Not here. She was already turning for the door, already reaching for the latch. And it was the first time in 19 years she had not answered a straight question. And then, somewhere above them, in the inner ward, a bell began to ring. It was not the hour, not the gate, not the fire, not the muster. 3 strokes, and a pause, and 3 strokes again, a pattern Ilva had heard once in her life, on a winter morning when she was 19 and the old king had died. It meant the Alpha King was walking his own house alone. Marin's hand stopped on the latch. He is early, she said. He did not come alone in the end. He came with one man at his shoulder, an old gray soldier who took up a position by the door and became, to all appearances, furniture. That was the entire escort. The Alpha King of the Ashvale had walked into a room containing a barefoot poison warden and a woman with a knife at her belt, and had brought one aging man and no particular concern. Ilva got to her feet, because a person did, and regretted every part of it. "Sit down," Emrys said. "Your Grace, you have been on your feet for 11 seconds and you have gone the color of a fish." He pulled the chair out from the wall, turned it around, and sat on it backward with his forearms folded along the top rail, which put his eyes almost level with hers, and did something quietly outrageous to the dignity of the moment. "Sit down, Warden. I have no interest in catching you twice in 2 days." She sat. Marin was already sinking into a bow. "Your Grace, forgive her. She has been very unwell, and she is not herself, and if anything was said or done on those stones that has been taken for more than it was, then the fault is mine for letting her stand at all." Shh. Emrys turned his head and looked at Marin for a long moment. Ylva watched him do it, and had the strangest impression that he was not listening to the words. He was weighing them, the way she weighed a cup, turning it in the light to see what had settled at the bottom. "Nothing was taken for more than it was," he said pleasantly. "I claimed her. She was claimed. The right is quite short. There is not much in it to misunderstand. Your Grace, she is a servant of the household. She is the finest poison warden in 5 territories, and she has kept me alive for 6 years, so I am aware of what she is. Keep her. Thank you." He said it without any heat at all, and it landed like a slap all the same. Was there something else? Marin's mouth closed. "Then I would like a moment with her. Your Grace." "I raised her." "I know," Emrys said. "I have read your ledgers. You have been keeper of remedies here for 19 years, and the still room accounts are the tidiest in this house. Not one erasure in 19 years." He smiled. "That is remarkable, in a house where I cannot get a grain tally that agrees with itself." There was the smallest pause. It was so small that Ylva, who had spent 6 years learning to notice exactly nothing, might have missed it. Marin smiled back. "I am careful, Your Grace. Evidently, a moment, please." She went. The old soldier drew the door shut behind her, and then it was Ylva and the king and the smell of feverfew. "They tell me you do not remember it," he said. "I remember the hall. I remember your hand. I do not remember what you said. Then I will save you," asking around for it. He recited it without any ceremony at all, the way a man gives directions. "I said, 'Hear me,' I said. 'This wolf is spoken against and the blood is not cold, and I take her hand by the standing hand and let every wolf here be witness.' Then I said your name, then you fell over, which I will admit was not in my plan for the evening." "Why?" Ylva said. "Because you were about to die on my floor? People have died on your floor before. Not in front of me." He tilted his head. "Not with the Vascure watching." There it was. Ylva let out a breath she had been holding since she woke, and something in her chest that had been standing on tiptoe sat down. Politics. Of course it was politics. The relief was so enormous and so shameful that she had to look at the blanket for a moment. "So it was for the envoys," she said. "It was partly for the envoys? And the rest?" "The rest," Emrys said, "you will find out in due course, and not lying in a sick hall bed at the wrong end of a very bad night." He straightened. "Here are the terms. Since I am told you prefer things laid out, the claim stands. I will not break it, because a claim broken by an Alpha King in the same month it was made would finish you far more thoroughly than my brother managed. You keep your post and your rooms, and nobody in this house says one word to you about the stones. If they do, I want the name." "And what do you want?" Ylva said. "I want you at the high table tonight, Your Grace. Wear whatever you like. I am told some effort is customary, but you have the face of a woman who has never once made an effort for anybody's benefit but her own, which I find restful." He rose and pushed the chair back against the wall. "One turning of the moon, Warden. Stand where I put you for one turning of the moon, and at the end of it, if you still want out, I will find you a way out that does not cost you your name. You have my word on that, in front of a witness." The old soldier by the door inclined his head half an inch. Ylva looked up at him and understood quite clearly that she was being handled. She could not have said which part was the handling, that was rather the trouble. Why me? She said. Emrys paused at the door. Because in 6 years, he said, you have put your mouth on 900, and some cups that were meant for me, and not once has anyone thought to ask whether you would like to. He opened the door tonight then, Your Grace. And, Warden, he did not turn around. Whatever you are given to drink between now and then, bring it to me first. There is a particular cruelty in being made to eat in front of people who have been laughing at you, and Ilva had the whole stare to consider it. She had put on the grey wool because it was hers, and washed her face and pinned her hair and looked at herself in the black window of the still room for longer than she cared to admit. Then Marin came in behind her with a cup in her hand. Drink this. Ilva took it. Wormwood. Honey, something under both of them. What is it? A settling draft. You have gone 3 days without food worth the name, and you are about to sit in front of 400 people who watched you go down. Marin's voice was the flat kind she used over a bad wound. It will keep your hands still. I will drink it at the table. Marin looked at her a moment too long. Then she smiled, and it was a good smile, warm and tired, and exactly like 19 years of every other smile she had given her. Do not sit down hungry, she said, and went out. Ilva stood alone with a cup given her by the only mother she had ever had, and thought about a man saying, bring it to me first. She pocketed it and hated herself the whole way up the stairs. The hall did not go silent when she came in. That would have been merciful and quick and over. It went quiet in patches, table by table, the way a field goes quiet when something is moving through the grass. And by the time she reached the high table, there was a lane of held breath running the length of the room behind her. She had spent 6 years standing at that table. She had never once sat at it. Emrys did not rise, which she was grateful for. He moved his cup half an inch toward her, the way he had for 6 years, and something in the ordinariness of it let her get into the chair without shaking. She took the cup, turned it in the light, wet her lip, held it, waited, the 4 slow breaths that had kept a king alive, and set it down. It is sound, she said. Thank you, Warden. And that was the moment the hall understood what he had done. Not the stones, not the claim. This. He had put the woman who tasted his wine into the chair beside him, and then let her go on tasting it, so that nobody in that room could tell themselves she had been raised out of pity. She was still working. Ilva found the table. The voice had come from 2 nights ago, the one about tasting the proposal. 3 young men sat at it, studying the grain of the wood with tremendous scholarly interest. Their names, Emrys said, not looking up. No. I did offer. You did, and if I take it, every wolf in this hall learns that the way to hurt me is to be clever within earshot, and the way to please you is to bring you a name. She cut into something she had no intention of eating. I would rather be laughed at. He was quiet a moment. You expected me to want them punished. I expected you to want them punished and to say you did not. Below them the hall had begun to talk again, in the careful voices of people talking about anything else. Ilva put her fork down. May I ask you something, Your Grace? You may ask. I make no promise about the rest. When I was on the stones, she said, and the hall was laughing. How long did you sit there? The line of his shoulders changed very slightly. She had spent 6 years reading exactly that sort of change in exactly that sort of man. Long enough, he said. Long enough for what? Warden, you were at this table the whole time. Her voice was perfectly level, which frightened her, because she could feel what was underneath it. You watched your brother speak against me, and you watched 400 people find it funny, and you sat here through all of it, and then you got up. Not at the first laugh, not at the 10th. You got up at the exact moment I began to go down, which is the exact moment it stopped being an embarrassment and started being a death in your hall with a foreign delegation watching. Ilva, so no, Your Grace, I do not want their names. They only laughed. You waited. She made herself pick the fork back up. Forgive me, I am told I am not myself. She had insulted a king in his own hall twice in 3 days, and found she did not particularly care what came next. What came next was that Emrys Ashvale put down his cup and said, "You are right, I am, entirely. I sat there and I counted, because I am always counting. And what I was counting was how long the hall could laugh before the Vaskir wrote home that the Ashvale eat their own for sport." He said it without any softening. "You are wrong about one thing only, and it is small, and I am not going to tell you what it is tonight. That is not an apology. No, you would not believe an apology, and I do not hand out things that will not be believed." He turned to face her properly, and the hall might as well have been in another country. "Now, the cup in your pocket." Ylva did not move. "You have been sitting on it since you came in," he said. "You put your hand over it twice." She took it out and set it on the table between them. He did not touch it. He looked at it, and then at her, and there was nothing in his face at all. "Who gave it to you?" "A kitchen girl," Ylva said. The lie came out clean and flat and unhurried, and it was the best work she had ever done, and she knew before it left her mouth that he had not believed a word of it. He did not challenge her. That was the terrible part. He looked at her with an expression she could not read at all, then picked up the cup and passed it to the old grey soldier at his shoulder. "Bevan, to the cellar, sealed, and nobody's hand on it but yours." "Your Grace?" "Now, Warden." Emrys sat back. "Since we are being honest with each other in the parts where it does not matter, here is something for you. In 6 years, how many times have you found something in my cup?" "Never, never," he agreed. "A perfect record. It is the reason I never troubled you before this week." He reached inside his coat and laid a folded warrant on the cloth, weighed it flat with 2 fingers. "And in the last 2 years, 3 men who ate at this table have gone home hale and died in their beds within the month." The hall noise went a long way off. "Nothing comes to this table that does not come through me," Ylva said. "I know." "Then it did not come through the table. It came after. It came from the household." "Yes," Emrys said, and pushed the warrant across to her. "Warden of the table, and every room the table is fed from. The larder, the cellar, the smokehouse, the wellhead, the still room. You may bar any door in this house, to any hand in this house, and the only person who can overturn you is me. And I will not." He let go of it. "You may bar my counsel. You may bar my captains. You may bar the keeper of remedies, if it comes to that." Ylva put her hand flat on the paper and found it was not steady at all. "Why, me?" she said. Truthfully this time. "Because whoever it is has walked around your perfect record for 2 years, Emrys said, "and there are only 2 explanations. Either they are better than you." He rose, and the hall rose with him. 400 wolves scraping their benches back at once. "Or they taught you." He was gone down the length of the hall before she could get a word out. She did not remember leaving the table. She remembered the unlit stair to the still room, the cold coming up off the stone, and the shape standing halfway down it in the dark. "There you are," said Merrin pleasantly. "Now, where is the cup I gave you?" The trouble with a warrant, Ylva discovered, was that it did not tell anybody how to feel about you. She barred the still room on the first morning, properly, with 2 of the household watching, her own seal on the door and the key round her own neck. And she said the words out loud so nobody could later claim a misunderstanding. Merrin was not there. Merrin had gone out at first light to the birthing of a farrier's wife and left word she would be 3 days. It was the most courteous thing anybody had ever done to her. "You do not think it is her," Junia said, holding the lamp. "I think it is nobody, until I know it is somebody. That is my whole trade." "That is not an answer." "No," Ylva said. The king came down to the cellar on a second evening. She heard him on the stair and had time to arrange her face, which she resented, and then he came in under the low arch with his coat off and his sleeves already turned back, carrying a lamp. He had evidently gone and found himself. "Show me," he said. "Your Grace, You have a whole craft and I have never once looked at it. 6 years. I have taken a cup out of your hand every night of them, and I could not tell you what you were looking for. He set the lamp on the barrel head. Teach me. Ilva stood there with a rack of empty flasks behind her, and had the sensation of a floor moving very slowly under her feet. It is not interesting, she said. Let me be the judge. So she showed him. She started with the smell of the room, and made him stand with his eyes shut for a count of 30 until he could pick out the wet stone and the oak and the sour place under the third rack where something had spilled a decade ago. Then the 4 breaths. Then she poured 2 cups from one jug, put a harmless bitter root in one, and set them in front of him. He got it wrong 3 times. The 4th time he had it, and he was so pleased with himself that he laughed out loud in a cellar with nobody in it to perform for, and Ilva turned to the rack and busied herself with nothing at all, because her chest had done something inconvenient. Now the useful part, she said. The part that keeps you alive is not the tasting. Anyone can be taught to taste. It is knowing which cup is worth tasting. Meaning nobody poisons a barrel. A barrel is 40 gallons and 11 people. Whoever is doing this is patient and precise and working small. So I do not watch the wine. I watch the hands. She pulled the tally board off its nail. 211 people in this house could put a hand on something that reaches your mouth. 31 of them can do it without anyone finding it strange. That is my list, and I have never shown it to a living soul. He read the board properly, all the way down, the way a man reads a thing he intends to remember, and Ilva watched him and thought, whatever else he is not pretending about this. Your name is on it, he said. Of course, my name is on it. I am the most likely person in this house to kill you. It would be poor work to leave myself off. Emrys looked up at her over the board, and his mouth did something that was almost a smile. Warden, he said, I would like to say something appalling. You are the king. You may say what you like. That is very nearly the first time in 9 years anyone in this house has told me a true thing without first working out what it would cost them. He handed the board back. It is extremely disarming, and I do not much care for it. Then he reached past her for the jug, poured a cup himself, and drank from it before she could put a hand out. Ilva was across the floor, with her fingers round his wrist before she had decided to move. Do not, she said. Her voice came out wrong. Do not ever do that. He went very still. She could feel his pulse under her thumb, unhurried, and the warmth of him going straight up her arm, and the thread under her breastbone had come awake, and was pulling, and neither of them said anything at all. It was my own cellar, he said quietly, my own jug. It does not matter whose jug it is. That is the entire point of me, Ilva. 6 years, she said. 6 years I have gone first, every single time, and you may not simply decide one evening in a cellar that you would rather not let me. She let go of him. She stepped back and found the rack behind her and put both hands on it. Do not do it again. No, he said. I will not. And then she smelled it. It came down through the vent hatch above the 3rd rack, sweet, faintly green, sitting underneath the smell of the smoke like a second voice under a first. She had read of it once, in the black book, in a hand 200 years dead, sweet-leaf banked and smoldering, and the vent hatch had been open when she came down and was open now, and there had been no smoke in this cellar all evening. Out, she said. What? Out. Now. Do not breathe. She had him by the coat, and moving before he could argue, up the stair with her shoulder under his arm, and the sweetness came after them all the way. And at the top, the door would not give, because somebody had put a bar through the outside rings. Ilva put her heel through the panel beside the latch. It took 3 goes. She had a lungful by the 2nd and another by the 3rd, and by then the light was swimming, and she got the bar up, and got the door open, and got them both out onto the cold flags, and went down on her hands and coughed until there was nothing left in her. Bevan found them. Then Junia. Then half the household all at once, all shouting. Through the noise, Ilva got herself up onto one elbow and looked at the man kneeling beside her, and what she saw in his face was not shock. "You are not surprised," she said. "You are green," he said, "and your hands are shaking. And this is not the conversation." The hatch was oiled. She got the words out one at a time. "I checked that hatch. It has been stiff for 4 years and this evening it was oiled. That was done by somebody in this house tonight, who knew you were in that cellar." "Ilva, how many times?" she said. He did not answer. She started to laugh, which hurt, and then stopped, because the laughing was going somewhere she did not want it to go. "That is why," she said. "That is the whole of it, is it not? That is why the hand on the stones. There is one person in this house who can smell a thing before it reaches you, and she was about to die on the floor of your hall, and you were not going to be able to replace her." She looked up at him. "You did not claim a woman, Your Grace. You claimed a nose." His face changed then. It was the first time she had ever seen it do that. "Is that what you think?" he said. "It is what I know." "Then you are wrong about the second thing," Emrys said. "And I am still not going to tell you what it is tonight." For the better part of a fortnight, Ilva set herself to finding out what the Alpha King was hiding, and the Alpha King, with enormous good humor, declined to be found out. She was good at this. She had built a trade out of watching hands. So, she watched his, and who came to him and who did not, and by the end of the fortnight, she had a great deal of information and not one answer, because he would not fight fair. She would ask about the 3 men who had died in their beds, and he would answer fully, in detail, and somehow she would finish, knowing less than when she started. She would ask why he had never taken it to the council, and he would say something outrageous about the council, and she would laugh before she could stop herself, and the question would be gone. Once, cornered with nowhere left to go, he had looked at her a long moment and said, "You are extremely difficult to lie to," and walked out, which was not an answer either. What she got instead was all the rest of it. She got him in the larder at midnight, with his sleeves shoved up, holding the lamp while she went along the shelves. She got him gray with tiredness on a crate in the smokehouse, at 3 in the morning, telling her about the year the river froze. She got him bringing her, on the 11th night, with tremendous ceremony, a plate containing 1 piece of plain bread and a cup of water. "What is this? The only meal in this house that cannot be tampered with." "I have thought about it a great deal." He sat down opposite her on the cellar step. "Eat your extremely safe supper, Warden." She ate the bread. It was the best thing she had ever tasted, and she was furious about it. That was the trouble. Somewhere in that fortnight of cold stone rooms and small hours, Ilva stopped wanting him to go away. It arrived the way a fever arrives, which is to say that she was perfectly well and then she was not. She learned the difference between the voice he used on the council and the one he used on her, and to want the second one. She caught herself on the east wall one night, watching the line of his throat while he looked out at the dark, and was so appalled that she did not speak for a quarter of an hour, and he let her not speak, which was worse. And under her breastbone the thread burned on, and every night she lay in her narrow bed and told it, firmly, that it was a right and a legal formula and a piece of old law, and every night it declined to be told. It broke on the 14th night, in the still room, with the door open and the lamp low. He came in and sat on the bench across from her, with nothing in his hands. No question about the list, no paper, nothing she could file the visit under. He sat in the lamplight and looked at her, and she put the pestle down and turned round and heard herself say, in a voice she did not recognize, "What do you want from me, Ilva?" "No, I am at the end of it." Her hands were not steady, and she did not care. "Every day you come down here, and you will not say what this is, and you will not leave me be. Tell me it is the nose. Tell me you need a mouth you can trust, and a woman nobody will miss. Tell me anything that makes sense. Because I am not built for wanting things I cannot have, And you are making me want. She stopped. It was 3 days too late to stop. Want what? Emrys said. He was not teasing. There was nothing left of the teasing at all. Do not say it. You have known for a week, she said. You have been enjoying it. He stood. He came round the bench without hurrying, the way a man crosses a yard toward a horse he does not wish to startle, and stopped an arm's length short. Then, let me be plain, since one of us has to be, he said. I did not claim you for your nose. I have known your name for 4 years. I have known the sound of your step on that stair for 3. When my brother asked you to stand at the reckoning, I congratulated him, and then I went out into the yard and stood in the cold for an hour like a fool, and when he spoke against you on those stones, I was on my feet before I had decided to be. His voice had gone quiet and rough. You are wrong about the moment. I stood up, Warden. That is the small thing. I would not tell you. I did not stand up when you began to fall. I stood up at the first laugh, and Bevan put his hand on my arm and told me what it would cost you if I did it then, and I sat back down, and it is the worst thing I have ever done. The still room was very quiet. Say something, he said. You should have told me. Yes, 2 weeks. You let me think I was a piece of equipment for 2 weeks. You were safer thinking it, he said. And I was a coward, and both of those are true at once. Tell me to go, and I will go now, tonight. And the claim ends in the morning, and I will take the shame of the breaking, so that none of it lands on you. Say the word, and it is done. He did not move any closer, or ask me to stay. Ylva looked at him. She had spent her whole life going first. 6 years of putting her mouth to a cup so that somebody else did not have to, and never once, not one single time, had anybody in that house asked her whether she would like to. Stay, she said. He crossed the space between them and kissed her, and every careful and orderly thing in Ylva's head went white and silent at once. His hand came up into her hair, and his mouth was warm and unhurried, and completely certain, and there was nobody watching, no hall, no stones, no 400 faces. There was the lamp, and the smell of dried thyme, and the extraordinary fact of him. Her back found the workbench. She had a fistful of his shirt, and no memory of taking it. When he made a low sound against her mouth, she felt it go all the way down through her, and the thread under her breastbone opened out like a door in a storm, and she understood, with the last working part of her mind, that this had not been a formula or a piece of old law for a very long time. Ylva, he said, against her jaw ragged, I know, say it plainly, because I will not guess at this. Stay, she said again, and pulled him down. Afterward she lay in the dark of his rooms, with her cheek on his shoulder, and his arm heavy across her back, listening to a king breathe, and let herself have it, just for an hour. Just until morning. The warmth under her breastbone had gone quiet and enormous, and for the first time since she was 9 years old on a winter road, Ylva was not counting anything at all. That was when somebody began hammering on the door. She was up and half-dressed before the second blow landed. Emrys was ahead of her, and it was Odric on the other side of it, white to the lips, with his hand still raised. Forgive me, your grace. He could not get his breath. It is your brother. Wystan is back. He is in the yard, and he will not come inside. And he is asking for the warden. Wystan Ashvale stood in the middle of the yard in the rain, and would not come under the arch, and when Ylva came out she understood why she had been sent for and not his brother. He was dying, not quickly. But she had spent 6 years learning what dying looked like, when somebody was doing it slowly and on purpose. And it looked like this. His eyes had the flat shine of a man whose wolf had gone somewhere far off, and was not answering. Do not come close, he said. I am not going to hit you. That is not what I meant. She stopped 6 paces off. Behind her at the arch, Emrys had halted where she had asked him to, which she suspected had cost him something. Warden, Wystan said. He got the word out, and then had to stop and find the next one. I need you to tell me what this is. He held out a small brown flask. Ylva took it, turned it in the wet light, drew the stopper, and did not put it near her mouth because she did not have to. Wormwood, honey. And under both of them, sweet and faintly green, sitting like a second voice under a first. She had smelled it twice in her life. Once coming down a vent hatch into a cellar, once in a cup in a still room, on the night she sat at the high table and lied about who had given it to her. "How long have you been taking this?" she said. "A year. Every day, every night." For the shaking. He wiped the rain off his face with the back of his wrist. "I have not been well since the spring before last. I was told it was the shaking." "It is not for the shaking." Alva stoppered the flask. "It is sweet leaf, banked in wormwood so you cannot taste the green. In a large dose, it puts a wolf to sleep. In a small dose, every night for a year, it puts the wolf to sleep and leaves the man walking about." Wystan closed his eyes. "Then it is true," he said. "I could not find you. That is the thing nobody will believe. I stood on those stones and looked at you, and my wolf did not know you. I have known you since you were 9 years old, and I asked you at midwinter and I meant every word of it. And on those stones, there was nothing at all. Like putting your hand on a door and finding no room behind it." He was shaking now, and not from the cold. "So I said the words. A man does not claim a woman. He cannot feel. I thought I had been wrong about myself. I thought I had done you a kindness." The rain came down between them. "Who gave it to you?" Ylva said. "You did." Ylva did not move. "It is in the book," Wystan said. "The still room book. Every flask, every month, for a year, written out and signed. I was shown it. I was told what you were and I did not want to believe it. And then I was shown your own hand." He looked up at her, and there were tears on his face, or rain, and it did not matter which. "That is why I came. I have been 3 days on the road working out how to ask a poisoner whether she poisoned me, and I got here and I looked at you and I could not do it. So I am not asking. I am telling you what I was shown, and you may do whatever you like with it. I have never written your name in that book in my life." "I know," Wystan said. "I knew the moment you opened the flask. You did not put it near your mouth. Whoever wrote those pages would have made a show of tasting it." Ylva stood in the rain in the yard of the house she had lived in since she was 9, and felt the whole floor of her life go soft. "Wystan," she said, "who showed you the book?" And then a door opened along the colonnade, and a lamp came out into the wet, and a warm and perfectly ordinary voice said, "Wystan Ashvale, you poor boy, you are standing in the rain." Maren came across the yard with her shawl over her head and her sleeves pushed back, scolding him gently, the way she had scolded every sick thing in that house for 19 years. And Wystan Ashvale, who had faced 400 wolves on the reckoning stones and not flinched once, took a step backward and began, very quietly, to shake. They sealed the Baskir Treaty on the last night of the month, and the whole of Cairnhold was scrubbed and hung and lit for it, and Ylva stood at the Alpha King's right hand in front of the same 400 wolves who had laughed at her on the stones. Nobody laughed. That was the part she had not been ready for. She had braced for it the way you brace for cold water, and it never came. The hall watched her come in on his arm and was silent. And somewhere in that silence, Ylva understood it was not respect, it was recalculation. Every wolf in the room was working out what she was, now, and what it would cost them to have been wrong. "You are counting them," Emrys said quietly. "I am. So am I. I have counted this room every night for 9 years." He looked out over it. "My father used to say a hall is a held breath. You do not get to stop counting. You only get to choose whether anyone can see you doing it. Is that what tonight is? Tonight is worse. Tonight I have to look delighted." He said it lightly, and it did not come out lightly, and Ylva glanced up at him and caught, for one unguarded moment, the whole weight of it, sitting behind his face. 9 years of it. The counting, and the performing, and the being what 400 people needed him to be, so that nobody looked too closely at what he was not, and the thread under her breastbone opened, and she felt it. Not his expression. Him. Tiredness that was not hers, and under the tiredness, a fear that had been running quietly for years, like water under a floor, and under the fear, aimed at her, so warm and so undefended that it took the breath out of her lungs. Dilva jerked her hand off his arm. Emery's went completely still. You felt that? It is the right, she said. Ilva, it is the right. It is an old law and a form of words, and it makes a thread, and a thread carries heat. That is all it is. She was speaking too fast. It does not mean anything. There was a small silence. No, Emery said. Of course. Probably nothing. But his voice had changed. It had gone careful and even and courteous, the voice he used on dukes and frightened councilmen, and he had not used it on her in a month, and he was using it on her now. Then the horns went for the ceiling, and there was no time left to mend it. The Vaskir Treaty is closed with 1 cup. 1 cup, poured in front of both parties, drunk from, by both rulers in turn, and no hand may touch it between, and no mouth may go before theirs. That is the whole point of it. 2 rulers who trust each other enough to drink without a warden. Ilva had argued about it for 4 days, and lost. She watched the cup come up the hall on a boy's outstretched hands. She watched the wine go in. She watched the envoy of the Vaskir lift it, and speak the words, and drink, and hand it across. And in the moment before Emery's took it, the lamps moved on the inside of the rim, and Ilva saw that the glaze was wrong. It was nothing. It was a dullness, a bloom, 3 fingers wide on the inner curve where a mouth would go, and it was on the far side from where the envoy had drunk. And any other person alive in that hall would have seen a cup. She did not decide anything. Her hand simply went out and took it, the way it had gone out 10,000 times, and she raised it to her mouth in front of the Vaskir delegation and the whole of the Ashvale, and drank. The hall made a sound like a house settling. It was on her tongue before she had swallowed, bitter and cold, and traveling fast, oleander with something sharper stacked on top of it, and she knew exactly what it was for, not enough to kill. Enough to put a strong wolf on the floor of his own hall in front of a foreign delegation, shaking and voiceless, at the precise moment he was to be sealed as an equal. Not murder, ruin. Walva set the cup down, and turned to the envoy of the Vaskir and said, in a voice she borrowed from somewhere and would never afterward be able to find again, "Forgive the discourtesy, my lord. In this house the king's cup is tasted. It is not distrust, it is simply how we are made." Then she smiled and lifted the cup again and drank the rest of it and passed it back empty. She stood through the speeches. She was numb from the elbows down by the second one. She stood through the oath and the sealing and the answering of the horns, spine straight, hands loose, chin exactly level, and when the hall rose and the noise came up and covered everything, she walked out under her own power. Emery's got to her before the stone did. "Do not shout," she managed. "Do not send for anyone. It is oleander and hemlock root, and I need charcoal and salt and bevan, and nobody else. Ilva. If the Vaskir learn, there was poison in that cup tonight. There is no treaty, and if there is no treaty there is a war, by the spring. So, it was the heat, and I have not eaten." Her teeth were chattering. "Say it back to me." "It was the heat," Emerus said, "and you had not eaten," and his hands were shaking as he lifted her. She was 3 days coming back. She spent them in his rooms with a bowl beside the bed and Bevan at the door, and Emerus sat in the chair through all 3 nights, and did not once take his boots off. On the 4th night, when she could finally stand, she woke at the 3rd bell and found the chair empty. She should have gone back to sleep. She went down instead, through the cold house, on legs that did not want her, to the still room, where the door was barred and sealed with her own seal, and the key was on a cord around her own neck. The seal was broken, the door was open. There was a lamp on the bench, and Emerus Ashvale was standing at her table with the still room book open in both hands. He did not startle. He looked up from the book with the face of a man whose dreaded thing has finally arrived on time. How long? Ilva said. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Her voice did not sound like hers. You have been in this room for 2 weeks. Behind my seal, with my key on my own neck. There is a second key. There has always been a second key. He set the book down very carefully, as though it might go off. Ilva, sit down before you fall down. Do not. Then stand and listen, because I am going to say it all at once, and badly. He came round the table and stopped when she stepped back, and did not try again. For 2 years, somebody in this house has been killing men who ate at my table, and I could not find how. Everything that reaches my mouth passes one pair of hands. In 2 years, I never found a single crack in your work, and there are only 2 things that can mean. Either you are the finest warden in 5 territories. He paused. Or you are the reason nothing is ever found. The lamp hissed. You thought it was me, Ilva said. I thought it was possibly you. I have to think it is possibly everyone. That is what the job is. His jaw was tight. And then my brother spoke against you, on the stones, and you began to die on my floor, and I stood up. And, yes, part of me stood up, because the one person I could not question and could not clear was about to be out of my reach forever, and I wanted you inside my house, and inside my sight, and inside a claim nobody could break. He said it steadily, and he did not soften one word of it, and the rest of me stood up, because I had been watching you go up and down that cellar stair for 4 years, and I could not sit there and let it happen. Both of those are true. I have stopped pretending they are not. Ilva looked at the book on the table. Show me, she said. He turned it round. He did not have to find the page. It was already marked. Whiston Ashvale, 1 flask, wormwood and honey, for the shaking. Signed off in a small, tidy, sloping hand 12 times, once a month, for a year. It was her hand. It was her hand exactly. The way she made the tail of the letter, the way she ran the date up against the margin, because she had been taught not to waste a page. I never wrote that, she said. I know. I have never written the name of a man I was not tasting for into that book. I have never made up that flask. She stopped. You said you know. For 11 days, Emery's took a folded paper from his coat and laid it beside the book. That is your hand. I asked you for the list of the 31, and you wrote it at that bench. Look at the letters where they cross. Gilva looked. In her own list she crossed her letters on the downstroke, because she was left-handed and had taught herself out of a smudge. In the still room book, in the pages about Wyston, every crossing went the other way. The floor of her life, which had gone soft in the yard in the rain, went out from under her entirely. She taught me to write, Ilva said. Yes, she taught me the hand. She sat behind me, and she held my wrist, and she taught me every letter I know. Ilva put both hands flat on the table, because there was nothing else to hold. She can write as me. She has always been able to write as me. Every page in this room for 19 years, Emery said quietly, is in a hand that 2 people in this house can make. And for 6 of those years, there has been a warden, with a perfect record standing between that room and my mouth. I was the proof, Ilva whispered. Whatever she did, the book said I checked it. I was not the shield, I was the signature, yes. She took me off the road when I was 9. Ilva heard her own voice go up and could not stop it. There were 4 of us on that road and she took me. She fed me and she taught me. And she made me what I am. Ilva, Emrys said, and there was nothing in his voice but grief. I do not think she found you on that road. I think she chose you on it. Ilva stood in the still room where she had been happy and understood that she had never once been a person in it. She had been a clean, careful instrument, kept sharp and kept trusting and kept exactly where she was needed, and everything she had ever believed about her own smallness had been put into her mouth by the woman who needed her to stay in that room. You should have told me, she said. I could not. You had 11 days. And if I had come to you on the first of them, and said, "The woman who raised you has been using your name to kill men for 6 years. What would you have done?" His voice cracked for the first time. "You would have gone straight to her. You would have gone to her because you are loyal all the way down. It is the best thing about you." And she would have known within the hour. And she would have been gone, or you would have been dead. Probably both. She turned it over twice and could not find the flaw in it, and that was worse than a flaw would have been. Under her breastbone, the thread went on burning warm and steady, and entirely on his side, and she hated that most of all. "You let me sit at your table," she said. "You let me into your bed. You let me take a cup for you 4 nights ago, and you had already read this page. Yes, say something else." "There is nothing else," Emrys said. "I did it. I would do it again to keep you breathing. And I know precisely what that costs, and I am not going to insult you by pretending otherwise." Ylva picked up the still room book. It was heavier than she remembered. "I need air," she said. "Ylva, do not follow me." He did not follow her. She got out into the corridor and leaned against the cold stone and put both hands over her face and let it come. 19 years of it, in one silent, tearing breath. And a lamp came round the corner of the passage, and a warm and perfectly ordinary voice said, "I have been looking for you everywhere." "Oh, my girl," Marin said, "look at the state of you." And Ylva, who had 19 years of practice at going straight into those arms and none whatsoever at naught, felt her whole body start to do it and stopped half a step in. Marin did not appear to notice. She took the book out of Ylva's hands, gently, the way you take a knife off a child, and set it on the sill. "I told you on that first morning that there are things about that family you do not know." Her face was full of a grief so exact that Ylva could not find a seam in it anywhere. "Sit down, my love. This will hurt." Ylva sat down on the cold step. "Wystan did not fail you on the stones. He was made to. I know that." "Do you know who by?" Marin crouched in front of her and took both her hands. "His brother. Emrys has been dosing that boy since the spring, night after night, so that the wolf sleeps and the man walks about. And he did it to take the one thing his brother had that he wanted. And when it worked, and Wystan went down, he stepped over him and put out his hand and took you in front of the whole pack, and the realm called it a mercy. The passage was very quiet. And now he has found a book with your hand in it, and by dawn he will lay the whole of it at your feet in front of the Vaskir, because a king who has poisoned his own brother needs a poisoner, and he has had one at his elbow for a month, being grateful." Marin squeezed her fingers. "So we go now, tonight, before he can. You stood up in that hall and drank his cup in front of them, and there is not a soul in this house they will believe faster." Her voice went soft and warm and terribly kind. "It has to come from you, my girl. It cannot come from me. I am only an old woman with a still room." And Ylva sat on the cold step in the dark and heard the one thing that did not fit. "He has found a book with your hand in it." The still room had stood barred under her own seal for a month. That seal had been broken tonight. She had come down the stair and found it broken perhaps a quarter of an hour ago, and 3 people had stood in that room since. Herself and the king and Bevan at the door, and she had come straight up into this passage and spoken to nobody at all. There was no living soul in Carnhold who could have carried it to Marin in a quarter of an hour, not unless she had a key to that door she had never declared and had been going through it all month. "Yes," Ylva said slowly, "the book. He will use the book." "He will, my love. Then we should go. Now," said Ylva, "before he wakes." It was the longest walk of her life. The Vaskir envoy had taken the East Council room, and Emrys was already in it when the door opened, because Bevan was faster than Marin had allowed for. He looked up and saw her come in, and for half a heartbeat his whole face opened. Then he saw who she had walked in with, and it closed. "My lord," said Marin, and bowed. "It grieves me beyond speech to bring you this." She laid it all out. She was very good. She had the dates in the flasks, and the boy's own ruined body, waiting in the guest range, and never once raised her voice. "That is a lie," Emrys said. In every particular, he would say so, but his own claimed is standing here. Maren turned, and the room turned with her. It is plain to everyone that this girl loves him. She has every reason to protect him, so ask her. She held out a hand. Ylva, tell my lord what you know. Every face swung to her. The envoy leaning forward, Maren certain of her, already counting at one. And Emrys, who thought she had come to bury him. Ylva looked at him. I am sorry, she told him with no words at all. I should have believed you. Then she turned to the envoy of the Vaskir. None of it is true, she said. The Keeper of Remedies is lying to you, and I can show you how. The room pulled tight as a drawn bow. An hour ago, in a passage, the keeper told me that the king had found a book written in my hand. My lord, that book sits behind a door that has been barred under my own seal for a month. The seal was broken tonight. 3 people have stood in that room since it was, and I am one of them, and I came straight up the stair from it and spoke to nobody. Ylva's voice was steady. So ask her how she knew. There is only one answer. She has a key to my still room that she has never declared, and she has been going through that door all month. Maren did not move at all. And there is the book. Ylva set it on the table, open at the marked page. 12 entries against the king's brother, in my hand. My lord, I am left-handed. I cross my letters on the downstroke. Every crossing on that page runs the other way. She took the quill and wrote her own name in the margin in front of the whole room and turned the book round. Compare them. The envoy of the Vaskir bent over the page for a long moment. Then he straightened and looked at Maren and said, Keeper, explain this to me. And the grave, kind, tired old woman was gone, as completely as if she had been a coat somebody had taken off. What was left moved very fast for her age. She went for the book, both hands, turning with it toward the brazier at the end of the room, because 19 years of a forged hand will burn in under a minute, and there is no court in any territory that can convict a woman on a page which no longer exists. Ylva was faster. She got there first and put her palm flat on the cover and held it down. No, she said. Girl. For the first time there was something naked in Maren's face. You do not understand what they will do to me. You will stand in front of the families of 3 men and tell them what you did and hear what they say about it, and you will still be alive at the end of it every day. Ylva drew the book out from under the old woman's hands. You taught me every leaf in this house. You should have remembered the first thing you ever taught me. I go first. Then the envoy's guards had her, and it was done. The room emptied by degrees. They took Maren out. The envoy spoke to Ylva at some length in a voice of considerable respect, and she did not hear a word of it. Then it was the 2 of them in the lamplight, and Emrys had not moved. You saved my life again, he said, after everything. I stopped a poisoner, Ylva said. It is what I am for. The light went out of his face slowly, which was worse than quickly. Ylva, the thread. You felt it at the ceiling, I know you did. It does not matter whether it is real. She was so tired she could hardly stand. You watched me put my mouth on a cup for you, and you had already read that page. You were kind to me while you were weighing me. Do you understand what that is? It is what she did. She was kind to me for 19 years while she used me, and I never noticed because nobody had ever taught me the difference. I love you, Emrys said. I know, said Ylva. That is not the part that is broken. She went to the door. He said her name once more, and there was nothing left in it but wreckage, and she did not turn round. The house, Ylva woke to 5 months later, was not the one she had grown up in. Maren was in the cells under the old fort, and the rot she had grown quietly through that household for 19 years had been cut out, root and branch. Wystan had come back from the edge of it slowly and taken the northern holdings, and wrote to Ylva every month, letters that were mostly about drainage and entirely about apology. And Ylva was Keeper of Remedies. She had refused it twice and taken it the 3rd time because there was nobody left who could read the black book, and because she wanted the room back and would not let the woman keep it. She was good at it. She had always known she would be, The king did not send flowers. What he sent, on the 8th evening after she moved into the keeper's chamber, was a plate with one piece of plain bread and a cup of water and a note in his own hand that said only the safest meal in this house, nothing else, no request. It came again the next night, and the next, and every night for 5 months. Sometimes the note was one line. Sometimes it ran 3 pages and was not about her at all. A pension, a posting in the north, a grazing dispute laid out fairly on both sides. And then, what do you think? As though her plain answer were still worth something. She never wrote back, and he never complained of it. One of them said, "I have been trying to work out the exact hour I began weighing you, and the exact hour I stopped, so that I could tell you it was short. I cannot. I think it was not short." And one, near the bottom of a long page, she had promised herself she would not finish, said, "I do not want you back, because you are the finest warden in 5 territories. I have a house full of people who are useful. I want you back, because none of the rest of it is any good without you in the room." Junia had opinions. "Good," she said in the first month. "Let him send bread until he is old." By the 5th, she had given up subtlety entirely. "Keeper, with respect, the man has sent you supper 147 times. You are counting. Audric is counting. I am repeating it." Junia sat down uninvited. "You are miserable, he is miserable, and the rest of us are carrying the pair of you about this house like a crate nobody will set down. I was used, Junia. You were." And then he told you the truth about it, all of it, in the worst possible light, when he could have told you a version that made him look better, and you would never have known. She stood up. "That is the part you keep leaving out." And then, on the last night of the 5th month, the plate came with a note that was different. It said, "I have made you carry this for long enough, and being asked every day is its own kind of weight. You have made yourself clear, and you are owed peace in your own room. I will stop now. I am sorry. Everything I have said in these was true, and I will not say any of it again." Ilva read it twice. This was what she had wanted, so she could not account for the fact that it felt exactly like being dropped. He kept his word. There was no plate the next night, or the night after that, or for the whole of the following month. When she passed him in the corridors, he inclined his head and said, "Keeper," and it was even, and courteous, and not cold. Never cold, and it went through her every single time, like a splinter of river ice. And under her breastbone, the thread she had spent half a year strangling burned quietly on, and would not die, and would not let her alone. Then the summer moon came round again. She had not thought about it. That was not true. She had thought about nothing else for a fortnight, and had told herself she was thinking about the harvest. The whole seat came out for the reckoning. They always did. Ylva stood at the back of the great hall with the household. At the wall, where she had watched it every year of her life before the 1 year she had not, and she told herself that she would stay for the horns and then go. The horns went. The hall quietened, and the Alpha King of the Ashvale walked out of his own high table and climbed the 6 flat stones and stood on them, alone, in front of 400 wolves. Somebody dropped a cup. Nobody picked it up. It is not done. A king does not stand at the reckoning. A king is claimed by council and by treaty, and by careful men in small rooms. He does not put himself up on those stones where any wolf alive may look at him and say nothing at all, and let the whole pack watch it happen. "Hear me," Emrys said. The hall did not make a sound. "A year ago, I sat at that table, and let this house laugh at a woman who was worth more than every person in it, including me. And I stood up too late, and I have never once been forgiven for it, and I do not ask to be." His voice carried into every corner of that room. "Last year, I took a hand that was not offered. I have thought about that for a year. So tonight I am standing where she stood, and I am asking, and there is nothing in the world that obliges anyone to answer me. And if nobody does, then this hall may laugh, and I will stand here and let it, because that is what she did, and she did it better than I will." He had not found her at the back of the hall. Ilva of the still room, he said, keeper of remedies, warden of the table. I am asking you in front of this pack for what I took from you, in front of this pack, and I have nothing to offer that you have not already earned for yourself, so I am offering only the rest of it every day. Whether you ever say yes or you never do. 400 heads had begun to turn. And, if you say nothing, he said, then let this house hear me say that the fault was never in her, it was in us, and any wolf that ever laughed will answer to me for it. Let the stones remember her name. And I will get down off them, and I will not trouble you again. And I will still be here. He drew a breath to say the last of it. Ilva did not hear what it was. She was already moving, out from the wall, down the length of the hall, through a crowd that was opening in front of her like water, and she went up the 6 stones with her heart going like a hammer, and she took the Alpha King's hand in front of the entire pack before he had finished speaking. Nobody in that hall ever did hear the end of it. He looked down at their hands. Then, at her, he had gone completely white. Say it, he said, out loud, or I will not believe it in the morning. No, Ilva said. No, ask me again tomorrow. She could feel the thread wide open between them, blazing, and she let it, and watched what it did to his face. When there are not 400 people watching, when you have had a night to be certain, ask me in the still room with the door open, and no hall and no stones, and you will say yes. Ask me, said Ilva, and find out. He asked her the following morning at 7 bells, standing in the doorway of the still room with his coat on. Wrong, she said. Yes. He asked again the morning after that, from pure nerves, and she said yes again, and told him that if he made a habit of it, she would put something in his bread. They were mated at the turn of the autumn on the flat stones, because Ilva insisted and would not be argued with. The whole city came. Stan came down from the north and stood at his brother's shoulder and cried harder than either of them, and when it was done, he took Ilva's hands and said the words of the old rite backward, the way it is said at a mating, so that the last thing spoken over those stones was, "Let the stones remember her name." She did not weep. She had never been a weeper, but the thread gave her away completely, and Emrys laughed at her through his own tears, and after that she stopped caring who saw. There, he said, when it was finished. The stones have you now. There is no unsaying it. I have no intention of unsaying it. I walked up them on my own feet this time. You did, he agreed. The first time I had to come and fetch you. Ilva kissed him, and for once, she let him have the last word.